Hi, I'm Lucy from Sew Essential, and today I'm talking through the items in my sewing kit that I really wouldn't want to live without and that I use pretty much every single sewing project. All of them are available on our lovely website, so I'll pop a link to our site and everything I mentioned below. And you'll also find a link to our weekly newsletter for a healthy dose of sewing inspiration straight to your inbox too. So the items in my kit that I use every single project. First up, my seam guide foot. So this is a foot which has got markings on it for 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, 1/2 an inch and 5/8 of an inch, and it just helps you to sew perfectly straight seams. You line the fabric up, the edge of the fabric up with whichever seam allowance you want to sew, and it's just so much easier than using the needle plate. I got one of these when I first started sewing, so I was struggling to use the lines on the needle plate, and then now I just never use anything else. I just love it. Unless I'm using like a specialist foot for a specialist technique, I've always got this on my machine. My machine is the Husqvarna Viking Brilliant 75Q, which we do stock on our website. And then I think you can get these feet for Pfaff machines as well. We stock those on the site. And then there's similar things for Brother and Janome. I'll pop links to all of them below, the similar sorts of things that there are, so that you can have a look and find one that's suitable for your machine. So I would say always purchase genuine parts that are for the right make and model of machine. But then also, if there isn't one of these feet for your machine, you can get like a magnetic seam guide, which you just attach to the needle plate, and that will, you just line the edge of the fabric up against that as well. So there's lots of different options, but I really think it's a great thing to have to sew lovely straight seams. The next item that I use all the time, it's really inexpensive. I think they're about £3 something on our website, is the purple thang. And you can see it's just got like a stiletto pointy end. It's got a hole in one of the ends up here, and it's got 1/4 of an inch piece on that end, and I use it for a variety of different purposes, but the most important one is that stiletto end is brilliant for easing fabric in. So if I'm easing a sleeve in, for example, and I've got the sleeve pinned in place, the two pieces of fabric, obviously one of the pieces has to be sort of eased in. I can use the stiletto end to make sure as I sew the sleeve that it all stays in the correct position and feeds through the machine properly, that it doesn't fall out of place. And then you can use the little gap as so you can use it as a bodkin, so you can put elastic through the gap and then feed that elastic through a casing. The 1/4 of an inch sort of piece on the end is great for measuring 1/4 of an inch, and you can also use it to push fabric through the machine and sew lovely even pleats as well. So yeah, it's just a really useful piece of equipment, really inexpensive, but I use it every single time I sew. You can also turn corners through with it as well. You can use the little flat 1/4 inch piece on the end to turn a corner through, and then you can use the stiletto end to poke a corner to make sure it's nice and sharp. And then if I'm using like a really fine fabric, that stiletto is quite pointy and I could quite easily go through the corner. So if I'm using a fine fabric, I like to use this Prim corner shaper tool. It's a bit more blunt on the end, and again you can just get that into the corner on like a collar or a waistband or a pocket and give it a good wiggle and push that corner out and get a nice sharp corner on it. So I use this a lot of projects as well. The next thing I want to talk through is wonder tape. It really is a wonder. So it is a double-sided tape that you can stick to fabric, and you can stick two pieces of fabric together, and it is so useful. The main use for me is for sticking down invisible zip tapes or sticking buttons into place when I'm using a button sewing foot. Obviously you can't pin buttons in place, but you can use a little bit of this tape to hold them where they should be and then sew them in place with your machine, which is faster than hand sewing as well, obviously. But I also use it for sewing invisible zips, because when you pin zips in place, it can just be a bit bulky tricky and a bit bumpy, and things don't stay exactly where they're supposed to as you remove the pins. But with the Wonder Tape, it's lovely and smooth. It doesn't add any bulk, it doesn't make it awkward, it makes it really easy to sew those zip tapes, and then it just washes away. You know, you leave it in the fabric and then it just washes away when you wash the garment, and it is absolutely brilliant. I wouldn't ever want to be without it. The next thing I want to talk through is my Unpicker. So this is a Madeira one. I'm not sure if these are still available. Everything I will put links to below. But I think we've got a hemline version instead. But what I like about this Unpicker is it's a more substantial Unpicker than the little ones that you get. So the handle's bigger, more substantial, not as fiddly. But the rubber end is the really important part of this Unpicker. And you might think, well, why do I need that? But when you unpick something and you're left with all those annoying like strays of thread, can be a real faff pulling all of that out. It can be quite time consuming. With one of these Unpickers with the rubber end, you can just drag the rubber end across those threads and it will just tease them out of the fabric, and it just makes it so much quicker and easier to remove all that excess thread, especially if you've unpicked something like overlocking stitches. It can be a total godsend for that. So I use that every project. Then I also use my Chako pen. So these come in a wide range of colours, and they are just tailors chalk but in a pen format. It's got like a little roller disc thing on the end, and you can draw really precise, accurate lines with these. They're refillable as well, and they come in 4 different colours. I'll pop links to it all below for you. But I find with tailors chalk, it can be a bit chunky and a bit thick sometimes, whereas this gives you real precision and accuracy. And if I'm marking my fabric, I want it to be marked exactly where it needs to be marked. So I love these and I use them all the time. And then next up is my scissors. So my scissors of choice are these Japanese Kai steel Janome scissors. They're available on our site. They're beautiful. I've had them for about 8 years. I can't remember if I've ever sharpened them. I might have done at some point, but they are just wonderful. And the thing I like about them, I have tried a lot of different scissors, as you can imagine, but I just like the way they fit my hand. They feel like, not some of the tailor's shears and things like that can be really big and heavy, and the handles can be massive, but these fit my hand nicely. They're not overly heavy. They're really easy to maneuver. They're 9 inches, so they're not too long. I feel like it's quite easy going around curves and cutting tricky shapes out when I'm cutting patterns out and things. So I adore them, I love them, and I just like the purple handle as well. I think that's quite nice as well. So yeah, big love for those. And then to accompany those, I've got my little Janome embroidery scissors, and I love to use these for trimming, grading and clipping seams. So especially when I'm clipping round curves, if I was using a bigger pair of scissors, it's quite difficult to get, you know, right up to that seam line without accidentally snipping through it. But with the little scissors, you've just got a lot more control because you're a lot closer to it. So I use these every project as well. And then the next thing I want to talk through is the silk organza that I like to use, which I have just treated myself to a new one. We sell this by the ½ metre on the site, so you'll get 2 pressing cloths out of ½ metre. I've treated myself some more because the ones that I've had, I've probably had for about 8 years, and they're just looking a bit sad now. They have been used a lot, like every week for 8 years, multiple times. So I just thought it was time for a new one, and they were too embarrassing to show you on here, so it was a good excuse anyway. But the great thing about this is it withstands the heat of the iron, but it's sheer, so you can see what you're pressing, and you just use it as a pressing cloth over the fabric, over the garment that you're pressing, and it just protects that fabric, but you've got that visibility so you can see what you're doing. Just finish the edges of the cloth with an overlocking stitch to stop it fraying, and it is just a wonderful, wonderful item to have in your sewing toolkit. If I've got a particularly delicate fabric, sometimes I double up on the organza, just fold it in half for an extra bit of protection, but you can still see through it even then. So yes, I would not want to be without that. It is wonderful and perfect. And then Still on the subject of pressing, I've left mine at home, but my tailor's ham and sleeve roll I wouldn't want to be without. Highly recommend, if you don't have these and you're dressmaking, invest in them. They are worth every single penny, and they're not that expensive either. But sorry about that. I think the point is, when you're pressing, they just enable you to get into, you know, the nooks and crannies that you wouldn't be able to get into on a flat ironing board. So you can stand your ham up on the short end, you can put a sleeve head over the end so that you can get right into the seam of the sleeve head. I press my darts on the ham because, you know, very often they're sort of curved, and I think they just sit better on the ham. So you can use all the different sides of the ham to position your garment and get into those nooks and crannies, and you'll just get much more professional results with them. And then with the sleeve roll, I managed for ages without a sleeve roll. I used to just be trying to sort of lay the sleeve flat on the ironing board and press the seam open, and it was just a bit fiddly, and I wouldn't always get the seam properly open, or I might press the edge of the sleeve by accident and end up with a crease down there. When you get a sleeve roll, you just slide it inside the sleeve, press your seam open, and it's job done. It's nice and easy. So they are the things I would not want to live without. I find them super useful. They're all available on our site. Please tell me in the comments what are your favourite sewing tools and gadgets. I'd love to hear from you. If you like what you see today, please like and subscribe, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.